Hello, fourth graders, and welcome to Math on BCPS-TV. My name is Mr. Tang, and I'll be walking you through Week 7, Lesson 1, Fractions and Decimals. Our objective for this lesson is that we will be able to relate fractions and decimals with denominators of 10 and 100 by using place value understanding and visual models in order to understand the relationship between fractions and decimals. So if we're going to break this down, what we're going to be doing today is relating fractions and decimals with denominators of 10 and 100. And we're going to be able to do that by using place value understanding along with visual models. So what we already know about place value, our ones, our tens, our hundreds place, and visual depictions of that. And the big understanding is how fractions and decimals work together, how they're related, and how we can see them side by side. So let's start off by thinking about this. Where do you see decimals in your everyday lives? Take a couple seconds to kind of think through that. Where have you seen a decimal out and about in the real world? Here are some examples. Maybe at the grocery store. Maybe with sports. That looks a little high for Chris Davis, though. Maybe next season it's going to be that high. At the gas station. Gas is really cheap right now. On the radio, 106.5. Maybe on your nutritional facts. Maybe the price of something. And maybe when we're looking at data such as the amount of rain. Where else do you see decimals in your everyday lives? So it's important to think about the structure of our number system and how we organize our numbers. We do a base 10 model where we are familiar with our ones, our tens, and our hundreds place. The decimal point is a symbol used to separate whole numbers from decimal values in a number. To the right of the decimal place, we have our tenths place, and then to the right of that, we have our hundredths place. If you look at the tenths place, it says 1/10 of 1. In the hundredths place, we have 1/10 of a tenth. So just like how we go from our ones place to our tens place, every place value to the left is 10 times more to the one on the right. In previous units, you worked with whole number representations shown below. In this unit, we will use the flat to represent one whole. The rod will represent 1/10. And a unit will represent 1/100th. I hope that you can see the connection between decimals and fractions here. It's important to understand how decimal parts are related to the whole. Our one whole is that whole that we're looking at. Our tenth is going to be 1/10 of that whole. And our 1/100th is 1/100th of that whole. So for the tenths, we need 10 of them to make one whole, and for the hundredths, we need 100 of them to make one whole. Next, we're going to hear from our friends at Pearson about how we can write fractions as decimals. As you watch, think about the connections you can make to what you know about adding and subtracting whole numbers.
How can you write a fraction as a decimal? Think about this question during the lesson. On Kelsey Street, 6 out of 10 houses have swing sets in their backyards. Write 6/10 as a decimal. Fractions and decimals can be used to show relationships between numbers. What does 6/10 signify? It means that out of the 10 houses on Kelsey Street, 6 have swing sets. To write 6/10 as a decimal, you can use a grid to help. There are 10 houses, so each house is 1/10, or 1/10.
Okay, so it says drag 1/10 pieces into the grid to model 6/10, or 0 and 6/10. So here we got 1/10, 2/10, 3/10, 4/10, 5/10, and then 6/10. So the fraction says 6/10, or the decimal can be written as 0.6. But decimals should be read mathematically.
1/10 equals 0.1. 6/10 is 6/10, or 0.6.
So again, decimals should be read mathematically. So for example, the 0.6 is actually read as 0 and 6/10, or 6/10. So the decimal point can be read as an and, or establish the difference between your whole numbers and your fractions.
Remember that the value of the first place to the right of the decimal point is tenths. So 6/10 of the houses have swing sets. In the Kelsey Street neighborhood, 75 out of 100 houses are two-story homes. Write 75/100ths as a decimal. Use a grid to help. There are 100 houses, so each house is 1/100th. 1/100th equals 0.01. 75/100 is 75/100ths, or 0.75. 75/100 equals 75/100ths. So, 75/100ths of the houses are two-story homes. Why does 75/100 equal 0.75 and not 75? 75/100ths is a fraction, or a part of a whole, so it must have a value less than 1.
Now you know how to write a fraction as a decimal.
And now it's your turn to try it out. First up is your Reteach page 12-1. At the top of the page, you have some review for vocabulary. Tenth, hundredth, decimal, all of these words are used here. The rest of the page has a couple more examples for you to go through. When you finish that, you can move on to practice page 12-1. There's another example at the top of the page, and then some guided practice in the middle, numbers 1 and 2. When you feel comfortable and ready, feel free to move on to questions 3 through 6. You're going to complete this independently and turn this into your teacher for grading. After you finish that, there's an opportunity for extension and more activities on the next practice page titled Math Practices and Problem Solving. Well, we hope you enjoyed your time with us. I know I did. And until next time, stay safe, wash those hands, and do the math.